in the United States where authorities are concerned a new Texas gun law will increase violence. The new law allows most people to carry handguns in public without a permit or training. It was pitched as a way to let people more easily defend themselves without government interference. Texas joins nearly 24 states that allow some form of unregulated handgun possession. Joining me now is Peter McGauran, the former Consul-General to Texas. Peter McGauran, thanks so much for your time. You arrived back in Australia just a few months ago in February of this year. Explain to us the politics and the thinking that gets Texas to a law like this open carry law that they've passed.
As we all know, Texas has the highest licence rate and gun ownership in the United States. It's fiercely, if you think the other states, Arkansas, Alabama, Mississippi, are pro-gun, Texas is in another category altogether. It's not so much that they've changed the laws to ease gun ownership or open carry. It's the extent of it that's going to be very controversial, because even pro-gun rights organisations and individuals will be concerned about the law and order aspect of this. The police are against it. The police are a major constituency of the Republican Party. So the government, the Republican Party, may have overshot the runway on this one.
Yeah, well, the police are saying it's going to make it harder to do their jobs with this change of law.
Yes, but there is a feeling that gun violence is so out of control in Texas, as it is in other states. And by the way, Texas is probably, on most of the statistics, lower than a number of other states, including some of the liberal-leaning states. There is a feeling, I've got to protect myself. And there are some instances in the last couple of years where potential mass shootings were averted by people pulling out guns and shooting the offender. And you can see them on YouTube. So there is some rationale for the government's action.
I guess if the problem is so far gone, it almost becomes a realistic proposition that would work if every single person has a weapon. But it also, there's a trend. Talk us through this other law with making it harder to get an abortion in Texas, because at the state level, when we look at the US presidential election, Texas wasn't that far off flipping to the Democrats, yet at the state level, the politics is very different and going more and more to the extremes, I guess, on guns and on abortion.
Yeah, it's a very complex situation, and it ebbs and flows, Kieran. By the way, Trump won 2016 election by 8 to 9 points. He won by 6 or 7 points. For a long time, many people thought Texas was in play, including local Democrats, not so much the hard operators from Washington. But as it turned out, it was something of a false alarm, and that has emboldened them. Now, in 2018 midterms, which is December election, they took a bath in the state legislature. They got close to losing their majority in the House of Reps, and their Senate majority was slashed. They recovered most of it in December 2020, and they're salivating at the thought of winning again in 2022. And remember, this is not an amateur operation. The Republican Party in Texas is the crown, is the jewel in the crown of the Republican Party. It's the second biggest state. It funds the Republican presidential elections to a large extent. They are hard, smart operators. Now, I'm very taken back, because all of the briefings I received, including from the governor's office, was that after the near-death experience of December 2018, they worked out a pragmatic, reasonable Republican leader, such as Governor Abbott, can be as conservative as you like, but don't proselytise. Don't try and push morality down people's throat, and they will keep re-electing you in Texas. That playbook seems to have been torn up, and it can only be because the evangelical Christian churches now control the grassroots. Notice that not a single Republican legislator in either the Reps or the Senate at the state capitol in Austin voted against it. It's like opposing Trump. You will not get nomination or pre-selection if you oppose Trump. And and you will not get nomination, at least not in Texas, if you oppose abortion reform. What shocked everybody from my calls over the last few days is the extent of it. No abortions allowed after 6 weeks. Most of the law reform on abortion in the conservative states have been around no abortions after 22 weeks or no abortions under certain circumstances. It's the extent of this reform that's taken everyone by surprise.
Well, just finally, something that surprised me from what you've said today, I guess the broader Trump influence in the Republican Party doesn't surprise me. But in the home state, the former governor, George W. Bush, the Bush family are no great fans of Donald Trump. Is the Bush legacy still having any influence in the Republican Party at the moment, or is that seen as a bygone era now?
Bygone era, completely evaporated. I attended a number of events with George W. Bush, and he was fantastic. I mean, but it was the old fiscal discipline, inter-alliance, actions on world affairs. It was all the moderation. But he would make jokes. He knew he was a dinosaur. I know the Trump's very close in Texas. He's revered in Texas because he's not seen as weak. He's seen as erratic and not necessarily somebody you want to invite into your family, at least not on a permanent basis, but he's also not seen as incompetent, even though we would. The Americans will not accept a weak or an incompetent leader, and that's Biden's problem at the moment. They certainly think he's incompetent after Afghanistan, and he's raised the spectre that he's also weak. I think Biden's got a stormy weather ahead.
Former federal minister and Consul-General to Texas, Peter McGauran, thanks. Really good to catch up. Thanks for that.
Thanks, Kieran.